So we're looking at the big stories, the big issues in crime this week with former Met Detective Jackie Hames. And some of the big issues actually that have come up this week, Jackie, is the Police and Crime Commissioners, which you were talking about last week. That fascinating interview with one PCC. But there is this election for the West Midlands, and the voter turnout was, what, 10.3%? It is very low. Raises questions about legitimacy, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I think the problem is it's picking your way through all the problems here. We're in the middle of August, near a bank holiday weekend. Is that the best time to hold an election? The difficulty is that when the legislation was laid down for these elected commissioners, it said that there needed to be 35 days and there had to be an election. And sadly, the previous command commissioner died. 35 days later, we ended up with an election just before the bank holiday where everybody's away. So there has always been a problem about the turnout and whether the electorate are really interested in these sorts of elections. And that debate will continue. The argument, the other side, is that, of course, police authorities, which the PCCs replaced, weren't elected at all. So at the heart of this is how the police become more accountable to the public, whether it should just be through the local MPs or whether the PCCs are going to gain in popularity. People, once they get to know who they are, what their policies are, how they're holding the local chief constable and the constabulary to account, and realising that actually they can have a say in local policing issues. It may be that they'll gain in popularity, but at the moment the public don't seem either interested or to even know that they exist.
There's an issue. Real concern about some figures out this week. Nearly 3,000 sex crimes alleged to have taken place in British schools over the last 3 years, 320 alleged rapes, 90% of the victims, alleged victims, children here. It begs the initial question, I guess, Jackie, are things increasing, are things getting worse, or because of recent publicity are more people reporting offences against them?
Well, we've seen that across the board, haven't we, with so many of these, particularly with these historic sex allegations. People are feeling more confident about coming forward, about being believed, and that may well be the case in here. You need to really dig down into these figures to figure out what was going on. Half of the suspects in these cases were adults, and that's, for me, is the most worrying thing. Children at school, obviously, and young people at the sexually most vulnerable time in their lives, and they're developing and exploring and experimenting themselves with their own sexualities. Are they being manipulated or put into positions of being, they're vulnerable to unscrupulous adults? This is very concerning, obviously, because it's happening in schools. So schools need to be made aware of this, and we need to make sure that there's more in place to make sure this doesn't happen.
I can't think, after 30 years in the Metropolitan Police, Jackie, I can't think of anyone better to ask about whether London has got no-go areas, because the UAE has said there are some parts of London, particularly for pickpocketing, that you should not go to. Oxford Street, Piccadilly Circus, 2 of them. Is that fair? Is that a fair comment?
Well, I think it's, if in any big city, if you're going to avoid an area where a tourist is targeted for pickpockets, you probably wouldn't go there in the first place. Of course, busy areas, particularly in this time of year when there's thousands of tourists, are going to be targeted by pickpockets. This has come from a couple of incidents where Emiratis were targeted. I think one was attacked in a hotel room. Clearly very distressing, but very unusual type cases. And I think the slight overreaction, which the Metropolitan Police has taken exception to, which you can understand. And they say that, crime has come down by 16% in this area. But if you look on the website of the Foreign Office, they will warn you about other cities around the world, the types of crimes that you should be avoiding. But most people, as long as they take precautions and aware of the potential possibilities,
should be okay. Great, so that's good to know. Look.